So Chris Kane, I think, is reasonably well known to everybody, but Chris has written a book and is out to talk about that. And he also, if I could just step out of the light, we did a little bit of a poll in advance, which we'll probably pick up on the Q&A side of things, but there's some good bits on the poll, and quite a number of you responded to that, so we'll pick up on the Q&A bits as we go through on that side. But Chris is partly to publicise his book, and also to start getting you thinking about what the workplace is all about and whether it's the right place. But rather than me talking about what he's going to be talking about, Chris, would you like to come up onto the stage and give us your presentation? Please, Chris Kane.
Good morning, everybody. I'm here today to get you to start thinking and to focus on one phrase. Are we asking the right questions? I think, to be honest, over the last couple of years, nobody has a clear picture of where the workplace is today, let alone where it's heading. My opening slide shows a number of young ladies. It is Ukrainian yellow because those two ladies actually work in Kyiv, and their office is a bomb shelter. Think about that as a workplace and how you put flowers into that. I'm grateful to Maggie and the entire Workplace Trends Group for the opportunity to start today, because I hope to set the scene for this whole concept. Ladies and gentlemen, Workplace Trends has been an enormous talking shop, an introspective, great, friendly environment where lots of people who've known lots of things about stuff regarding the workplace have met every year. And it's like every other professional get-together that we have, and I've seen a lot of them because I'm an unusual character in that I've crossed from surveying to facilities management to construction to design and all points in between. I've recently got involved in the health sector. My, oh my, oh my, that's a real eye-opener. I'm delighted to see such a broad composition. I believe, as our chair was saying, that there's a number of people from outside of the UK. I'm great to see so many young faces, because you, ladies and gentlemen, are the future. And if anyone discourages you from asking questions, particularly that little three-letter word, the most important word in the English language is why. Why do we do all the stuff that has been taught to us as this is the way we do things regarding the workplace? Because over the next 18 minutes or so, I attempt to show you or to encourage you to ask why more. Because the genesis for this was Rob Harris asked me to contribute to a British Council of Office research programme earlier this year, and to say, what's the research programme for the BCO, that august body, and how the future of the office might play out? Nobody ever thought to think about partnering with Workplace Trends. Wonder why. But it has been an interesting exercise, somewhat disappointing in many respects, because much of what I had to say in Dublin to 800 people mostly fell on deaf ears, because they were mainly focused on getting out to the pub. But just before I go into all of that, many of you get involved day in, day out in this interminable debate, the one about returning to the office or remote working. I think, ladies and gentlemen, that's a gigantic red herring, because it's binary. It's too focused on one thing, a office building, a physical building, when we're living in the midst of a huge upheaval in the context of a transition to a truly digital world. It's too narrow, it's binary, and yet we live in the third decade of the digital world. Think about that. Many people, and I hope to encourage you all here to have the courage to really accept that things have changed in our world. And it's really time, long overdue some might say, to have truly honest conversations about where we are. Because what I said to the BBC, or the BCO, Freudian slip, was effectively as an industry, and I mean the wider industry, and if you don't understand the context for workplace in the wider real estate, construction, financing, design system, then here's the plug for the book. go and read my book, because I've explained it in the context of Game of Thrones and the Seven Kingdoms and The Odd Couple, which some of the older members of the audience will remember that great Simon play about two characters, the landlord and the tenant, living in the one apartment and having to figure out a better way to live together. That's what's happening today right in front of us. But Ray Schneider's view in terms of looking at what's coming down the pike, if you're a property company, if you're a large surveying practice, a contractor, it's not looking good. And whilst many people in the media have said, yeah, it'll be all right in the night, this is just something similar to the dot-com crash or the GFC, they're sadly mistaken. Because not only are vacancy levels in the office, the workplace going through the roof, and everyone's doing their best to hide the grim reality. Frank Duffy at DGW and his team and Despina 30 years ago shone a light on how we use space. And at best, we were half using all of these massive carbon-guzzling buildings that we use then. What's it like today? Probably 80% underutilization. What's that going to do to portfolio footprints? You hear people like Standard Chartered talking about reducing their 8 million square feet to 4 million, half the space, twice the experience. These were some of the messages I delivered to the BCO in June. As I said, they fell on deaf ears. What are you going to do about it today, I asked myself. One of the things I would urge you to do is to stand back and have a look and try and see the wood for the trees. There's a whole raft of issues here which have significant implications for workplace and workplace trends. In fact, workplace trends, Nigel and Maggie, I think you need to rename it, because it's talking about trends, which is an extrapolation of what went on before. We're in the third decade of the 21st century. We're trying to apply 20th century thinking and 20th century models to 21st century post-COVID problems. So I would hypothesize that actually nobody knows anything, and we're still in the midst of a fog of uncertainty. William Goldman, the director of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and All the President's Men, once said to Hollywood this in terms of how do you make great films? He said, well, you've got to experiment because no one knows anything. We have to try things out. And I would challenge the workplace trends community to say, the people in this room, and it's still imbalanced, because I was speaking to Jennifer earlier, who's going to talk about change. How many HR professionals are in the room? None? One. Was that a tentative hand up there? Great. Well done you. You'll have a very successful career going forward, because HR as a function will be defunct within a decade, as will facilities management. But by being brave enough to go beyond your silo, you're exploring the fact that everything is connected to everything else. So, first big challenge for this audience is, do you have the courage to experiment, to try things out, to look beyond your silos? Because if we haven't only got one HR, how many landlords, how many property investors are here? One? Great. The industry, if you look at investment and development and everything, is the only sector of the economy which doesn't know its customers. Never had to, because people always needed space. Is that the case anymore? So this, some of you will be very familiar with the work of Simon Heath. This is the result of some of the workshops we did using our EverythingOmni framework to bring landlords, workplace experts, HR folk, whole raft of people. We were quite surprised to see members of major British property companies say, I never met so-and-so from a big pharmaceutical company before, and yet they spent 2 hours together and we put them through a crazy time around what could they do together. It was a very mixed bag. We spiced things up by adding in a few artists, a couple of social media influencers, and a couple of Ukrainian ladies, and Louis, our crazy cripple, who really set the house alight in terms of we don't give enough due credibility or credence to those who are less fortunate than most able-bodied people in the whole diversity and inclusion. You look around here, it's pretty balanced in terms of sexual balance. It's pretty good in terms of age profile. There's a few things missing, isn't there? Where's the voice of the disabled? Where's the voice of other ethnic communities? You know, we've really got to move and think and look beyond our boundaries. So, key themes that came out of all of this was everything is connected. If you don't know Leonardo da Vinci, you should go and look him up. And his famous quote is, realize that everything connects to everything else. We've got to get serious about carbon. And we need to have a proper dialogue between landlord and tenant, not just workplace trends. But once again, my challenge to this audience is, you people, us, we have a responsibility and opportunity to lead that dialogue. What we did to support all of this, everyone loves a good survey, but two of the key themes, won't be surprised to see, is the whole ESG thing. You know, those numbers won't surprise people in this room, somewhat did in the room in Dublin in June. And then the big one was everybody on the consumer view. Now, the difference with this little study was we didn't ask the usual suspects, the heads of HR or FM or corporate real estate. We went out into small, medium-sized British businesses and talked to CFOs and some other leaders at a board level. And the broad conclusion about all of this was, much of this will be very familiar to many of the people in the room here, that certainly from a workplace perspective, we're facing four major challenges. You know them all: obsolescence, carbon, etc. But they're all interlinked with this ESG agenda, with the economy and with technology. But what's really becoming very clear is the fundamental relationship between people and place has changed. Face-to-face was once the default, it is no longer. Are we looking at the office, the workplace, in the singular or in a multiplicity of dimensions? That's the challenge. And I would suspect that most people here understand that. The vast majority of the wider property workplace community sadly does not, because there's still this phenomenal fixation with one physical place. Hopefully all of this makes sense to everyone here. This is the Gordian knot in terms of everything is connected. It's the people and the place bit, which I've been talking about for years. The vast majority of people in our industry, the investors, the landlords, focus on place and people. Wonder what's wrong with that. But we can't ignore technology anymore. We cannot ignore our planet. And to make change, and Andy and others have been talking about smart working models for 20-something, maybe longer years. It has been listened to by some people, and I would call out the Government Property Agency, who's represented en masse here. Most people regard them as, oh, they're just the public sector. But they were one of the first groups of people to publish things with DGW in, 2005, around working beyond boundaries. COVID has now made that a reality, a truism, and something that cannot be ignored anymore. But if you don't understand those connections, you shouldn't be in this room, I would suggest. And this is the framework we have developed and it's with a crazy Scot who works for IKEA, or used to work for IKEA. And we said, how do we plan, or how do we move forward in this huge area of uncertainty? And firstly, we need to get a much broader, much more diverse set of voices in the room. We need to ask the right questions, and we need to really help people to go beyond conventional thinking. That's your challenge here today, ladies and gentlemen. But also, by working together in a dynamic environment, people then will have the courage to see beyond their silos, to be bold enough to consider that HR facilities, workplace as a concept, workplace consulting, is that going to be redefined as well? Because we have to look at these things afresh, and we have to see the wood for the trees. And by working across these boundaries, people can find new opportunities to redefine themselves. Because I think what's happened in the last couple of years is that COVID has not only changed the game, but it's changed the entire stadium, our entire frame of reference. You know, the genie is now out of the bottle in terms of workers were always wage slaves. They now realize they have changed. They have choice, should I say. They now realize that society itself is altering. Hopefully not too much. I've always talked about the 3 C's of choice, connectivity, and crossovers. You know, consumer choice is here for the worker, and leaders are trying to cope with it, and that has huge implications for the provision of space. When I talk about connectivity, it's not the internet, it's how human beings, we connect. You know, who would have thought you could talk to your doctor online? You know, education, I was talking to an educationist earlier about the whole world of third level education. So face-to-face is no longer the default. But the big crossover is all of these steps, from analog to digital, from process to insight, so static to fluid, from ego to eco, from me to we. And most people talk about these as individual sort of shifts, crossovers from 20th century thinking to the 21st century digital world. Very few people, and this is your opportunity because you're here today, can take a holistic approach. Please don't lose it, and don't be afraid to show how things connect and what are the implications. Because a funny thing has happened over the last year, in that, as I said, the odd couple, the landlord and the corporate boss, they now have a double dilemma. The dilemma is that their workforces are voting with their feet. It's not all that evident here, but go to the US and see what's happening over there. San Francisco is half empty. It might never get back to it again. Places like Northwest Arkansas are booming because Walmart and two other large corporates have got together to do something very different. So, if you talk to some investment funds, they really are fretting, well, you might use stronger language, because they can see the writing on the wall. The whole world then have changed, and we'll talk more about that later, and it's great to see the issue of neurodiversity on the agenda. As a surveyor, I couldn't even spell neurodiversity 20 years ago. But all of these things we need to understand. There's going to be some big changes to the model. So, please, please, please do not fall into the trap of the Emperor and the Hans Christian Andersen story, and in the context of the office. This is not just about a workplace in one place. It's about something quite different. Many people in the wider industry, certainly in the mainstream surveying property world, are trying to put a brave face on this. And it's up to the people here in this audience to help them understand that things are shifting, and we've got to apply fresh thinking. And our customers, our consumers of space, which are basically the workers, are voting for new ways of working and new types of workplace to access. We've been talking about this for 20-something years and more. We can't delay anymore to have those honest conversations, because time is ticking. It's ticking on two fronts. We're screwing up our planet, and AI, it's coming. Well, actually AI is here, and we need to understand what the implications are. And that's why the time is now to try things, new things, and stop looking in the rear view mirror. Have the courage to go beyond and sample things. Now, the key message for this audience is stop looking at the workplace in isolation. It's not about putting plants or biophilia or any of that. It's that and seeing how all of these things fit together. Can this organization move from being just a talking shop? What is the raison d'etre of workplace consultants and advisors? Is it your focus just on workplace design, getting places to look nice? Are we in danger of being overly introspective? Can this organization, this wonderful group of people gathered today, take a leadership role? Is there a window of opportunity? Many people here sell consulting services. There's a huge opportunity out there for different thinking. So one of the other questions I would urge you to keep in your mind as you go through today is asking yourself, what if? Not this is the way we've always done it, but do some proper reflection and be honest with yourself and ask yourself, because I want to say that we've got to go beyond the office building. We have to consider the office as a multiplicity of dimensions. It's not just a singular office, and I'm just about at time, and it's not out of plug and play, and we've got to get serious about carbon. Won't dwell on that too much, because it's no longer about saving the planet, it's saving the human race. And, you know, this will be meat and two veg for everyone here. It's all about the human rather than the building. We've got to stop building Henry Ford buildings. We need to get fresh perspectives around all of this. Frank Duffy said years ago, how do you justify space in an increasingly virtual world? That should be front and centre now. We need to think about the workplace on 3 levels of a spectrum. Some of it will be fixed. It'll always be. A lot will be flex, and a lot will be fluid, particularly in the world of meta and all that side of things. So, just one last thing to wrap up. Very interesting thing happened in the Nordics recently. At the end of 2021, Volvo decided to produce a fossil-free vehicle. They got it going 6 months later, and they produced the full prototype within 9 months. So, if you think about that, if Volvo can change, if the motor industry can change its love affair with the internal combustion engine, what could we do? But more importantly, ladies and gentlemen, what are you as individuals going to do? We all, individually and collectively, need to take responsibility of our destiny. And I would leave you with one final thought. We're stewards of the built environment. We, not only for the generations that follow us, but I fear for our children and grandchildren, consider, are we being good ancestors? Thank you very much.
So this is the time for Q&A now. So we have some online people as well, so we may be getting some online stuff. I will ask that if you have a question, when you raise your hand, if we can just wait till the microphone comes so that everybody can hear, both everybody in the room, and as this is a hybrid gathering, everybody remote can hear. So interestingly, I think I've got reminded of Alistair Campbell's recent book that he's put, But What Can We Do? About politics. There was a bit at the end there that said, it's all about you, it's what can you guys do? So it's really should be asking the question, but what can I do? It's all about us on the thing. So while we're just getting all the questions ready, the poll, there are about 30% of you answered, look beyond the building. Can we look beyond the building? That was 100% responses, yes, we should look beyond the building. Can industry adapt to ubiquitous change? I'm really pleased to say that 100% of people think that's possible. That's good. We get into a bit of time for a fundamental rethink. 70% of the respondents said, yes, it's time for a rethink. Nobody said, no, it's not. But 30%, maybe. Good on that one. And then, has our current property delivery system run out of road? That's an interesting one. We had 50% said, yes, it's run out of road. 13% said no. And 30%, 37%, and does add up to 100%, said maybe. So interesting stuff coming on there. So interesting food for thought. So, questions. So we have any questions in the room? Oh, it's always, I love the first question. Everybody says, can I go first? We have a question at the back.
In 1998, McKinsey, who we all know and love, published an important article called The War for Talent. In it, it maintained that demographic trends in the United States put a premium on young workers. 25 years later, do you really believe that employees have the whip hand in employment circumstances with human resources departments and with the bosses? Can you please justify that point that you made?
That's an interesting question. I would go back and say that no matter what happens, whether you hold the view that whip hand is still relevant in the emerging new world of work and the economy, and that the, shall we say, the industrial age mindset, and we're verging into the world of psychology and whatever here in terms of, and social history in terms of this idea of the boss and the worker. I think technology is changing all of that, and I would refer you to the more recent, Jennifer and I were talking about before, the World Economic Forum forecasting that by 2025, a huge proportion of today's jobs will change. People are forgetting all of that. Like, we're also forgetting that things happen. For example, the death of paper. That happened during COVID, by and large, because DocuSign and so many other things were forced on some of the major opposers of change, i.e. lawyers and the like, and doctors. Doctors now issue prescriptions virtually. You should see, and I work within the health sector, see the embracing of technology, and they're loving it. Now, it's clunky, for sure, but Britain has got a lot of problems, but it's going to happen. You know, much of the waiting lists we've discovered are full of duplicates. That's why Britain has a problem. Interesting stuff there. So I think, with all the greatest respect, I think we've got to think differently around this bosses versus worker. The most successful organizations in the world today are led by leaders who embrace the idea of encouraging their workers to be accountable, to deliver to outcomes as opposed to outputs. Because let's face it, much of the work done by administrative folk is in the last chapter. I'll leave that one with you.
So can we just say a big thank you for Chris and for starting off now? Thank you very much. Thank you.